Hello there, my name is Harish Shah, and I'm that guy whom they call the Singapore Futurist. The date today is the 27th of June 2025. Now, why am I telling you the date on which I'm recording this video? Very simple. I'm going to talk about a very wide, very broad, very in-depth subject, topic, and you already know what it is from the heading of this video on YouTube: the future of marketing. Very wide, very broad subject, very massive, but I'm going to address it anyways. Forgive me. The future of marketing. Now, before I talk about the future, I'm going to talk about the present. And before I talk about the present, I'm going to go back a little bit into the past. The last 25 years of human history has been about exponential technological evolution, hardware, software, systems, cyber physical systems, and intelligent systems. Technological evolution of scale, of proportions, of a rapid pace, of an extent, unprecedented, completely unrivaled by any period prior to the last 25 years. Be it any year in human history before the last 25 years, any decade, any quarter of a century, any half a century, any millennium. That's the kind of technological evolution we've just lived through over the past 25 years, up to this day, 27 June 2025. Now, along with that technological evolution, there's been a massive amount of evolution of society and of business and of products, driven precisely by that technological evolution. And that brings me to a problem today. Too much attention, too much focus over the last 25 years has been on the evolution of technology itself, but on the converse, equally, there's been a complete deficit, complete lack of attention and focus relatively to the evolution, the transformation, the changing trajectories of our socio technical realities in which we live, we consume, and we work. And what that means today is that today, for businesses to decline, today, on the 27th of June 2025, for businesses to fail, to not make the revenues, to not make the profits that they deserve to make, you do not need products, whether goods or services, that are not sellable. You do not need products that are not marketable, that are not popular, that would be less than useful to people, right? You can have brilliant products that could be very popular, that could be high in demand, only if people knew about it. Now, that's a very important statement. I just made that, even if I say so myself. Today, for a business to fail or decline, excuse me, all you need is for people to, one, not even be aware of your existence as a company or your product's existence or what your product does. Or even if people are aware, they're not consciously actively thinking about your company or your product, or it does not stay in their consciousness, it does not stay at the forefront of their minds after they learn about your company, after they learn about your product, after they encounter your company, your brand, or product somewhere. That's all it takes for you to not be able to sell enough to sustain yourself and go into decline as a business and fail as a business, to go bust as a business, go into a situation where you have to start selling your assets. At the very least, perhaps downsize to hope to survive, right? That's all it takes. That people are either unaware or not conscious or not, well, attentive constantly to the thought of your presence on the market as a company, as a brand, and of your product. That's the first problem. The next problem with marketing today is that buyers, whether business buyers or general consumers, they no longer, in general, they no longer actively or proactively go out looking for products to buy. They don't actively go out to look for brands or companies anymore. Now, as of the 27th of June 2025, as a company, as a seller, distributor, manufacturer of product, you have to go to your buyer, whoever that buyer is, and wherever that buyer is, not in the physical space, but in the virtual, digital, cyberspace. And not only do you have to actively, proactively make the effort to reach your buyer online, you have to message in such a way, you have to customize your message in such a way that it meets the precise individual preferences for not product but information and messaging consumption of your intended buyers. Now that can be a wide spectrum, so that's a lot of hard work, right? But that's the reality of today. For products to be relevant, for companies to be relevant, that's how you need to market. You need to go to your consumer, you have to go to your buyer, and then you have to tailor your messaging, your marketing messaging, right? And not just that, people have very short attention spans. So your messaging has to be very brief, very concise, precise, succinct, very short, very small. And yet, people have also very short memory spans and recollection spans. They need to remember your product so that they'll eventually buy it. So your messaging has to be such that it's short, concise, precise, succinct, but it's also very intriguing, very sharp, and it's very, very unique, very different, right? And it's got to be that impactful. And not only that, you have to go beyond just advertising when you reach out to your intended buyers. You have to educate them in a very brief, very short time about the availability, the existence of a product, the unique quality of a product, the differentiation of a product from everything else in the market. You have to give them a good reason as to why they need to remember your product, and you need to inform and educate them of and about how easy it is to access, to find your product, both online and offline. Because contrary to what a lot of people may have been harping on the last 25 years, especially the last 5 years, no, the physical shop space, physical retailing is not dead. It's far from dead, and it's going to remain relevant for a very long time, for as far as is foreseeable, and there's no real hard, tangible evidence to actually prove that that's not going to happen, right? So you need to, when you reach your intended buyers, you need to educate them very quickly, factoring that we all have very short attention spans and memory spans now compared to not 25 years ago, not 5 years ago, but just 3 years ago. Today, as of on the 27th of June 2025, right? So you have to educate in a very quick messaging effort wherever your consumer is in cyberspace, where to get the product, how easy it is to access the product, right? And how to therefore acquire the product, right? And you need to then start, before doing all of that, with a very strong, good analysis of profiling your buyer. You have to actually work out who your buyer is in terms of the bank account in general. How and from where is your buyer likely to draw an income? And where and how is your buyer likely to spend? What are the other expenditures of your buyer in general likely to be, and therefore what is likely to be the reasonable amount to be the right sweet price of your product, that when your intended buyer, intended consumer looks at it, there's no second thought. Because the way our minds in the post algorithm world, the way our minds work today, we don't have patience and time or the habit of second thoughts. So you need to price your product in such a manner that after you've gotten your buyer's attention, after you've made an impact where your buyer's not going to forget your company, your brand, your presence on the market, your product, your product's presence on the market in short time, your buyer is also not going to have second thoughts of the product after looking at the price tag, because that's one of the first things that we look at in a hyperinflation world today. right? Which, well, nothing in the world happens in a silo. Just as technology has been evolving, inflation and, cost dynamics have been evolving as well, right? So in such a world, what is that right price where the consumer, the buyer goes, oh, okay, so that's fair. I'll buy that. So that's what it takes in the present day to stay relevant and not decline or go bust as a business, right? It's very hard to price your products today and try to sell them as premium. It's a lot harder today to get away with doing that than it was just 5 years ago. Let's forget 25 years ago, right? So that's what's changed about marketing over the last 25 years in tandem with the technological evolution of the last 25 years. Now, the question is how many companies have actually kept up with it? How many industries, how many types of businesses have kept up with those changes? And perhaps then we may want to ask ourselves the last 3 years, has there been a spike in your attention being drawn to stories, to talk, conversations, to news about companies closing near you, far from you, or brands going bust, shutting down, big companies selling out? Has there been a spike over the past 3 years? And then now ask why. Has the inability to keep up with the changes of marketing needs over the last 25 years, has that got anything to do with that? So that's the present situation. Now let's talk about the future. The future is where A, you go to the consumer, you go to the buyer in the online space. You don't wait for your consumer to come looking for you. And you do that to one, inform and remind repeatedly and constantly your intended buyer about your existence, your presence on the market, and your product's existence and availability on the market. And you need to constantly remind and re educate your consumer, your buyer, of how and where effortlessly to access, to go see your product, service, or good, online or offline, and how to effortlessly then acquire the product, whether it's a good or service, online or offline. You need to give them these options, right? Then, how do you keep them coming back? Where, okay, I've used the product once, I have a lot more choices today than my father had for the same sorts, or my grandfather had for the same sorts of products in their younger days, right? So with so many options, why would I keep coming back to you after I bought your product? Because if I don't keep coming back to you, you're not going to last in business for very long now, are you? Right? So that's the future you need to craft and work on for yourself, that people keep coming back to you, because that's how your messaging and engagement is going to be. That's how your pitching of the product is going to be. And that's how your pricing of the product is going to be. And what you're going to have to do to be able to be successful at that is you're going to have to constantly keep tabs of where your particular specific product buyer is at online and how your intended buyer is behaving and using the features of the connected world online in cyberspace, and what are the tools and where these tools are is an important thing to note. What are the tools that your buyer is using online so that you can keep tab of where their movements, their trajectories, the shifts online and the shifts in their online behaviors, what they're going to be like. You have to keep tabs, keep track of all of that so that wherever your intended buyer moves, you follow and you continue to engage without overdoing it. Now, the last bit is probably going to be the most important, but it's only going to matter if you get everything else that I said prior to that right. I just told you about the future of marketing in terms of what you're going to have to do to keep your business, to keep your brand, to keep your product relevant after the 27th of June, 2025, for a good amount of time to come. You're welcome.